We are joined by Free Press editor Ali Wiseman. Thank you. A few days ago, the editors of the Free Press released a statement titled 60 Minutes released the unedited Kamala Harris transcript. Why should they release it?
It's none of your business, Ollie.
Well, it is my business, guys. As we said, there's an election coming up. Some people will tell you it's a very important election, and if we take them at their word, we deserve to know exactly how the candidates answer important questions. So maybe I should back up though and explain the kind of controversy a little bit that we wrote this editorial about. Kamala Harris sat down with 60 Minutes. She was asked about her relationship with Netanyahu, basically, and whether Israel was listening to the US government. She said, a clip aired on Sunday in which she gave a very long, unimpressive, waffly answer to the question. And then come Monday night, a very different answer was what she appeared to say. And so the question is, well, what did she actually say? And where did they take the slick, smooth answer from? Was it from that question, or did they just pull it from somewhere else in the interview? And we feel as though, in the interest of political transparency and also kind of accountability for an important interview, we're entitled to know what actually the vice president said.
Ollie, I'm going to try to take CBS's position here, which is not something I am comfortable doing. Because they've been so uniquely awful recently, especially with Tony DeCouple. But let's look at it this way. You do an interview, and again, I think this is a special situation because you have a presidential candidate who's not doing a lot of interviews, particularly not doing a lot of challenging interviews. You sit down and you do 45 minutes. Say you do an hour, something like that. And it is incumbent upon the editors at CBS and at 60 Minutes to get that into a segment that's 15 minutes, right? How do you, cut that piece without people getting angry? I mean, do you believe that the first bit that you saw, which you mentioned in your piece, was quite a word salad?
Yeah.
It was the sweet green of answers. It was all over the place. So that answer makes no sense. And then they replace it with something that makes a little more sense that might be from somewhere else in the interview. I used to do this in TV, and the lawyers would always say, how far is it from the question? If it's too far, you can't use it. So, what are they supposed to do in the sense that you got to cut some stuff out, right? I mean, I think that's probably their counter-argument.
Also, just apologies to Sweet Green.
Yes.
I mean, that's harsh. Yeah, very harsh.
Because one is delicious and the other isn't.
But, we actually got our hands on the CBS kind of journalism handbook when we were writing this editorial, and that has, this is an important kind of there are shades of gray, and in broadcast journalism you obviously have to make these kinds of calls. But firstly, taking an answer from one question and presenting it as an answer to another is just a big no-no in their book. So if they did that, it's a clear breach. And then I think even if it's an answer to the same question, there's a question of whether you're fairly accurately representing the vice president's answer. And I think probably not is the answer. But again, we could answer. There's a very simple way of solving this, guys, which is just tell us what she actually said. She was on camera. Why don't you just tell us?
And transparency is good, and transparency is especially good when you're speaking with the sitting vice president of the United States of America, right? So her words have some sort of historical significance, as much as I hate to admit that, given the words and the word salad, but it is sort of customary to have interview transcripts from presidents and vice presidents, even hosted on the White House's website, so that everyone can see what they're saying.
Well, that's the other point. I mean, even if she was just a candidate and not the vice president, her team will have recorded the interview too, just so they have a copy of it. That's kind of standard practice with these kinds of things. And so they could set their record straight too if they wanted. We asked the Harris campaign, and they, maybe you won't be surprised to hear, did not offer us the audio. But hey, it was worth asking.
So strange.
I know, it's so rude,
crazy.
Right? So rude. But yeah, it's strange, and I think that maybe CBS feel as though if you say yes to every request like this, suddenly every edit of every interview you do becomes a kind of debate in public. But what I would say is the bar should be higher for interviews that's important. It's probably the most important interview 60 Minutes will do all year, which is right ahead of an election with a presidential candidate. So I'm not saying every senator you ever interview you need to release a transcript for, but in something that's important, I think there's a strong case for it.
And I would argue if you're a journalist and you believe in more information being better, then there's really not an argument against having it out there. You've done your job. The reporter did his job very well. Bill Whitaker.
Bill Whitaker was great, by the way. He was a very good
I'm
interviewer.
sure he would love to have it out, although he doesn't want to get decoupled.
No,
I mean, the thing is,
the people that have the sort of the right to be most annoyed are probably a lot of the journalists associated with the interview that maybe they feel as though what they did was perfectly defensible, but they can't prove that because they can't show us the unedited version.
I think we have a right to be slightly skeptical considering when Donald Trump was interviewed by 60 Minutes, and part of the reason he said he wasn't going to be interviewed by 60 Minutes again was Leslie Stahl in an unguarded moment that was taped by the Trump people that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation or unverified or something like that when the FBI had it for a year at that point. Ollie, one final question for you. You do mention Trump in your piece, and you mention a tweet, or maybe he truthed it. Did that ever get into the lexicon?
I think the truths then get tweeted.
The truthing and then tweeting is this. 60 Minutes is from Donald Trump. 60 Minutes is a major part of the news organization of CBS. News organization is mysteriously capitalized. We're getting used to the weird capitalization, which has just created the greatest fraud in broadcast history. The greatest fraud in broadcast history. CBS should lose its license and should be bid out to the highest bidder, as should all the other broadcast licenses, because they are just as corrupt as CBS and maybe even worse.
Cue Elon lining up.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie, a bad bit of journalism here. I think that we can all agree on that. The response from Donald Trump is slightly terrifying, though, isn't it? It's kind of a Chavista response. Let's pull their broadcast license.
Yeah, I mean, what did you expect, Moynihan? A cool-headed and reasonable response, keeping everything in perspective. I think that's a huge overreaction, and I think reason to be worried about how Trump handles a free press and all those things. But I also would say, I think one of the things that's been really damaging for U.S. media in the Trump era is they focus on the over-the-top response as a kind of way of letting themselves off the hook. And so, if you want more trust in the media, if you want people to take you more seriously, including Trump supporters, maybe take the criticisms, the substance of the criticisms a little more seriously, and do the work, as they say, to win back the trust of your viewers and your readers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ollie, for joining us. I do wish more journalists were interested in public trust.